And welcome everybody to the Mental Health Hour. My name is Derek from Suck It Podcast, and joined as always my lovely co-host on this hour, Kat Daniels from the Teachable Soul Podcast.
Hello.
How are you, beautiful?
I am okay. I'm sick, so there's that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
How are you, handsome?
You know, I'm actually doing very well. I had a bad day Saturday, but I'm doing well.
Yeah.
Sorry. It happens. So this week we have what the hell are you doing?
I'm sorry. I didn't expect that to make as much noise as it did. I apologize.
It's okay.
It's just pens.
So this week we kind of have an interesting topic.
Yeah.
Something that we weren't expecting to talk about.
Right.
But kind of reared its ugly head due to a conversation that I don't know if we're going to go into, but it's going to be the center of it.
Yeah.
So let's just put it this way. We know somebody that suffers from mental illness, particularly PTSD and some other things, and over the weekend got arrested for DUI.
Mm-hmm.
This particular person was going to actually be on the show today to talk about mental health issues, but then turned around and got arrested for DUI.
Well, so I didn't want to go into it, but you went into it.
But I told you I'm not going to go into it, but I'm going to talk about it. So
okay. So here's how I would rather have put it, because, and it's because of the way I want to talk about this period anyway.
Go right ahead.
So I know many people in my lifetime, in my family, as friends, growing up in high school, who I can tell now, like, attempt to self-medicate themselves in order to function normally, and use either alcohol or drugs or whatever, screens sometimes, to do it, to like, people who use like social media to validate themselves and attempt to make them feel better about themselves, basically. Yeah. So our topic is vices in general, and there are many vices that falls under.
Correct.
We all have some.
But. Yeah. So as always, remember, we are not medical professionals. We are just people that deal with mental illness, right, and understand it. And this is just our opinion, not medical diagnosis or medical recommendations.
No.
And first off, I want to go ahead and preface anything going forward, regardless of what Kat says. My definition of vices, there's one vice in this whole conversation that may or may not come up, but I do not believe it's a vice, and that I believe it's actual medical need for people with mental illness, and that's pot. So if that comes up in this conversation at all, I'm going to go ahead and throw that out there now. It's not a vice. So if you sitting there going, well, I'm addicted to weed, you can't be addicted to weed, number one. But number two, if you use it for mental illness issues, then it's not a vice. So let's go ahead and throw that out there now. We're talking about cocaine, crack, alcohol, gambling, heroin, whatever it may be. That's a vice. So I just wanted to make sure we threw that out there before we got started. What? You were going to say something.
So I am not against people smoking pot. So you can say that.
Exactly. That's like, regardless of what you say. Yeah.
Right. I feel like if it affects your family life or your daily life, like if it becomes a problem, then it can be a vice. If you have it under control and you use it occasionally because you do need it for your mental health, by all freaking means, please do what is best for you. Because if that is truly what is best for you, absolutely do that. 100%. I'm with you. I'll back you. You need help? You need a card? Do you need to go to Colorado? Like, I don't know. But if it becomes a problem where, you have friends or family members coming to you and kind of sheepishly trying to say something about it, I feel like maybe you need to reassess.
Yeah. But overall, I mean, the whole topic of this conversation is going to be stuff that we lean on, that we shouldn't when we're having these mental health days, and unfortunately, that happens.
Yeah,
hell, it even happens to me. And I'm by no means an alcoholic.
Right.
However, when I'm having a bad mental health day, I do drink a beer or two.
Mm-hmm.
And that is literally it.
But that's okay. And you don't do stupid things afterwards, like,
No. But I mean, it does. The irony about it is, and this is, again, not medical advice, and this doesn't work for everybody, but it does work for me to an extent. A lot of people say, well, I'm using it to calm me down. And in my own head, I believe that's what I'm doing, because I believe that on my down days, I am like, my bipolar is like super high, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I always believe I'm on a high day, but my high days could either be shitty or good. You know what I'm saying? It's just weird how I feel. Do
you mean like by a super high day, and shitty or good? Do you mean like it's either really, really good or really, really bad?
Yes.
Okay.
So when I'm having a bad day, but I can still feel the excitement and you know what I'm saying? Like
all at the same time?
Yeah, it's weird.
Wow, so, that's got to be exhausting.
It is. So when I have my bipolar days, it's bad. I mean, I'll have, some people describe it as having a really low day or really high day. Well, some of my really high days are actually really low days. So imagine being super excited about being depressed. That's how that feels.
Wow. Super excited about being depressed.
Yeah, that is like the mentality that goes on in my brain.
How can you be super excited about being depressed? What happened?
Well, I'm not saying that's what it is, but I'm just saying imagine that.
Oh, so, okay.
You know what I'm saying? Because that's the feeling that it is. It's like I'm wired and ready to go, but I'm like, I'm very Eeyore-esque at the same time.
Is it like you're externally wired and ready to go, but internally Eeyore?
Could be.
Sometimes.
Not possibly.
Possibly. He's like, I don't really know.
Okay. I don't really know, but it just sucks. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll drink a beer to calm myself down, because it is a depressant. So, alcohol,
doesn't it make that other side go bad, like worse?
No, because it's already at its peak. My depression piece is already at its peak, but it allows my wiredness to soothe. I would rather be depressed about being depressed than excited about being depressed. So I would rather kick myself down a notch. But again, it's something that I shouldn't do. I need to do other things, regardless of whether or not it works or not.
I don't know about shouldn't. That's something that you could probably do. Well, without. Okay. So I once had someone explain to me that alcohol is the only drug or thing that does what alcohol does. There is nothing else. There's no other drug on the market that is legal, most likely, that does what alcohol does.
As far as the depressing side effects?
Well, the slow, I think it's a slow progression.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you have one or two, you'll be okay. But with Xanax, if you have even a low dose for some people, you can just be passed out.
See, Xanax doesn't even work for me at all, unfortunately.
Right.
Which is why I switched to Klonopam.
Right.
But it's, I don't know. I mean, though, here's the thing about it is, so let's not talk about me. Let's talk about other individuals. So
I want to also real quick. So I actually, on my husband's side of the family. Okay. They recently, oh no, hold on. I don't know how to mute this. On my husband's side of the family recently, we had someone who chose to drive drunk, and his daughter was in the car, and his daughter was 20 some odd years old. And she was drunk also, I think. And she had 2 kids of her own and a husband and whatnot. And they got into a car wreck while he was driving drunk, and she passed away. Wow. She didn't make it. And it's that I mean, that, and with what you initially started to discuss, it's just that was one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about vices today, is because they're, 1 or 2 is fine, but it's when it gets out of hand. Like I said, even with pot, it's when it gets out of hand that it becomes a problem, and it's a danger to not just your life, but other people's lives.
Oh, absolutely. But like, I think, let's take that piece out of the conversation, because I feel of all the ones that we're going to talk about today, I feel that is like the minor of it all.
Which one?
Weed, smoking weed. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, okay.
No, I'm just saying, but because, alcohol, a lot of people lean on alcohol, especially when they're depressed. Right. And all it does is make them more depressed. And that's the irony of it all. Yeah. And I've never understood it. So like, my dad was an alcoholic. He's recovering now. My brother, same thing. But
same.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my family has dealt with alcoholism, and I've always found ways to avoid it. Just because I don't want to ever be in that situation. So I'll never know or understand what the purpose of, alcohol is, as far as, excuse me. Why do people who are already depressed drink more? I don't understand that. Right. And I never will. It's more of an empathy thing than a sympathy thing, because you don't understand it. I mean, I get that it's a vice, and they're, they think it's gonna, calm them down or soothe their pain or whatever else. But in reality, all it does is make it worse.
Well, but I think that some people think that it makes them have more fun or be more fun or whatever the case may be. I think that some people think that they have to have alcohol in order to be a calm enough person to actually hang around, because otherwise they're just super, super wired and miserable to be around.
Well, I think we're having 2 different conversations. So,
well, you just said why.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, well, correct. But, for people who just drink it just so they think they're more fun or whatever the case might be, I think that's just your average everyday person who wants to go have fun, or is an alcoholic that uses, that as a vice to become more fun, not for a vice to help their mental health. Does that make sense?
No. What?
So what I think you were just talking about was somebody who drinks to have more fun, or whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
I'm talking about somebody who has a bad day, goes to the bar and drinks, a 5th of Jack, and then expects that to make him feel better.
Well, I think that's what I'm saying, is I think that's why. I think that they think that they'll have more fun if they're drunk, to some degree, maybe not all the time. But also if they're depressed, or I know that for a lot of guys, I don't know if this is still the case necessarily, but I know like back in the day, being sad for a guy was not acceptable.
Still not.
Right. And anger was the only like accepted emotion that guys could show. And so I feel like they used to say, okay, well, if I just have a drink, then I'll calm down and not be so angry. And I feel like maybe that was, at least for a while, partially what caused it. I was thinking about this today. So I was thinking about the prohibition, right? When that happened.
Okay.
Because alcohol is legal, okay, but it like severely hinders your ability to make decisions properly, or walk properly, or do anything properly, honestly. And so I just don't understand like why it's legal. And I was like, well, I mean, I guess I do, because the prohibition, whenever they tried to like make it illegal, everybody just for some reason they were like, well, everybody's like smuggling it into the country anyway, so we're just going to go ahead and make it legal again. And I'm like, but like drugs. But drugs, pretty much. Like they do that with drugs and we didn't make them all legal. Like I don't understand why alcohol is still legal. I'm sorry. And this relates to the conversation though, because alcohol is a vice. I mean, that people use to self-medicate with.
But so is gambling, and gambling is a vice, and that's
100%.
legal. So you can't compare those to what you just said. But somebody in the comments, not. Well, somebody in the comments just made a very good point. And I never thought about this.
Okay.
I never thought about it like this, and this is actually a very valid point. And it's. And by the way, the reason why alcohol is legal is because of money. That's a very valid point.
Same with gambling.
Yeah, it's a very valid point too.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. But no, this is what she just said. The depressant aspects of alcohol aren't necessarily immediate. The euphoria of intoxication is the appeal. And I get that. That makes sense. I never thought about it like that. That's actually a very valid point.
Yeah, because whenever I know when I'm feeling tipsy, I'm like, oh, well, I feel good.
Yeah, and
it's that initial feeling.
Correct. And you know what? Now that I think about it, that actually makes a whole hell of a lot of sense. Because if we rewind about 2 years to the first time I attempted suicide, that night I went out and I got plastered. I'm talking probably one of the drunkest I've ever got in my entire life. And even though like we went out that night and we did a lot of cool shit. I mean, we went to an escape room. We went out and remember I told you it was Christina's birthday that day. So so we went out and did an escape room. We went out to dinner. We went out to a bar. We went out and listened to some music. We did a whole bunch of shit. I was just fucking wasted. But that entire time, it's like you would have never thought I had a suicide attempt mere hours before.
Oh, so you were sober when you had the suicide?
Of course. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait a minute. Did you?
No. But what I'm saying is, so that's what I'm saying. So that comment actually makes a whole hell of a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I get now it makes sense. I never thought about it like that. So Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Maddie, for telling me that. That makes sense. Yeah. Who, by the way, she's at home now sick too. So that's, you both are sick and I feel bad. I'm sorry.
What is she sick with?
She's got some type of, she's something wrong with her throat. She's not feeling well.
That's how it started with me.
Yeah.
It's my throat.
Well, let's just hope hers is a sinus infection. She has a doctor's appointment today. Okay. So my best friend is sick. You're sick. Everybody's sick. I'm sorry. But anyway, back to the conversation. But no, that actually, like I said, that actually makes a whole hell of a lot of sense. I never thought about it like that before.
Right.
So So, but then it comes down to, like I said, I guess I'll just never understand.
I think it comes down to genuinely just attempting to self-medicate, not reaching out for help.
Yeah.
Not asking for help, not wanting to ask for help, which I totally understand and get. I think to some degree, all of us at some point in time don't want to ask for help. I was talking on my podcast one time about how, Western culture makes it so everybody feels like they're on their own and they have to do things all by themselves. And that starts, from the time that they're babies, where there are some cultures who the whole family sleeps in one room together all the freaking time. And the babies sleep in the bed until the next baby is born. And then that person, and then that the 2 or 3 year old goes into another sibling's bed until the baby now grows up to be, and they keep switching back and forth like that. And Western culture is like, no, the baby has to sleep in their own bed, in their own room, all by themselves and, cry it out, let them cry it out. For years, they were like, cry it out, which I hated. I still hate that. And so, I mean, if that works for you, that's fine. I don't judge you for it, but I
think another thing that comes down to is a control aspect.
What do you mean?
So if you're constantly in a state of depression. Okay.
Right.
That's something that can literally be out of your control.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, that feeling of euphoria, whether it be from gambling, that feeling of I got this, I'm winning money, or being stoned or drunk or whatever the case might be, tripping on whatever.
Mhm.
You have control of that.
Yeah. Well,
So I think but
you have
you
more
know what
control over it than you do your own hormones in your brain, which
correct.
causing you to feel, super sad.
Correct.
I think
And
too that like gambling is an upper, whereas like alcohol is depressant, and there are other drugs that do different things, of course, but
well, absolutely. But at the same time, again, it's a control thing, I think, partly.
yeah,
But then it also comes down to, hold on.
not
This is
just the
what,
obstacle for asking for help, but also the difficulty of getting help in this country, physical accessibility, locations of places people can get help, affordability, because it's super expensive. Oh yeah, like rehab, super expensive.
absolutely. And now that she's mentioned that, I'm going to go ahead and plug our sponsor.
Okay.
With the accessibility aspect of things, and the affordability of things, there are other places you can reach out to, and unfortunately, thanks to BetterHelp, that does make that possible. BetterHelp is an app that you can talk to a counselor anywhere in the world. You could text in the middle of the night, you can send an email, whatever, and they will contact you back as soon as possible. You also set up weekly conversations. It's a great app to use. And if you go to www.betterhelp.com/SIPod, that's SI as in suck it, SIPod, you'll get 10% off total. So again, that's betterhelp.com/SIPod. But so, I mean, there's lots of different things that you guys can do. And I think it's because there's a lot of things that are accessible in this country these days. It's the assumption that it's not accessible.
I don't know about the assumption.
Well, because the thing about it is, a lot of people think stuff is,
Hard to get to.
hard to get to, too expensive, or especially when it comes to mental health stuff. Who wants to constantly have to go onto their even people with good insurance? It's still $40 a pop. Most likely because it's a specialist to go
Copay or whatever.
Yeah, it's a copay to go visit. So if you're just barely making it by, and you got to go see your therapist 4 times a month, so once a week, I mean, that's $160 a month. But then on top of that, if you have insurance, this is if you have insurance, going onto your Cigna or Aetna website, trying to find one that's in your network, and then finding out whether or not they are accepting new patients, and then finding out whether or not they actually are capable of helping you. It's a constant rigmarole. And then, and that's if you have insurance. If you don't have insurance, the cost is astronomical. And then finding one that is in your price range that also can help you is even worse. So that's a very valid point. And that's why like places like BetterHelp exist for those reasons.
So I don't know if this is helpful or not, but I want to tell a story.
Please go right ahead.
Story time. So when we lived in San Antonio, I had a friend, and I'm not going to say anybody's name here because it's probably like patient confidentiality at a bare minimum. But I mean, they weren't my patient. I'm not in the medical field, but it's private information. So in any event, I had a friend who had a son. They have 3 or 4 kids. I think it's 4. So she had a son who at the time was like 9 or 10, I think. And he went to school and told his school counselor or something like that he was having suicidal thoughts. Okay. So he reached out for help and did the 100% right thing, right? So they were a military family. That's important to the story. So they were told by the school counselor to take him immediately to the nearest emergency room and tell them that that's what had happened, right? So they did, and I guess they thought that they were gonna I mean, I don't understand the logic behind taking him to the emergency room if his family had been called and they were able to at least make like a same day appointment with his PCM. You know what I mean? Because that's something. You're muted. You're muted.
Oh, sorry. I can answer that question.
Okay, what?
All right. So, if you are sent to the, so sometimes like, okay, so I can answer this question because I've been through it with Joe.
Okay.
So they sent us to a county place, you know, when she got suicidal, they sent us to a county place that assesses suicide.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And whether or not they are. Well, at that point, they will do one of two things. They'll say, go see a counselor or go to the emergency room, because the emergency room has the accessibility to get a psych doctor right away and then immediately admit you for those things. Otherwise, going to a psychologist and then waiting, or what same day appointments or whatever the case might be, doesn't have that same capabilities, because they still have to be sought by a psychiatrist at that facility in order to be able to get in if they're actually that point. So going to the emergency room actually allows for an immediate psychiatric evaluation in order to make sure that they can do that.
Gotcha.
Okay. But anyway, continue your story.
They went to the ER. Okay. And this was, so because they're a military family, they could have gone to the military base hospital, which had an ER at it, and gone there. But they were told to go to the nearest emergency room. Insurance usually covers it if you go to an emergency room, period, for military. And so they did. They did what they were told to do. Well, when they got there, they were given the he was given the assessment and whatnot, right? And they told them, hey, you need to go to this mental hospital and admit him. Like, we're going to transfer him to admit him to this mental hospital, right? And, yeah, hold on. Sorry. So, the parents weren't sure, because they had never heard of this hospital. They weren't sure if they wanted to put their minor child in a mental hospital with God only knows who, behind closed doors, with God only knows what, you know, with other mental health patients, and like, who only knows what goes on behind mental health facility doors. Okay. And he's, again, like 9 or 10. So they were told that if they just went and checked it out and they didn't like it or whatever, then they could leave and try to find another facility, right? Well, they were lied to, and they got there, and the police had already been called before they even got there. And it was just the most horrifying story that I can possibly imagine in a mental health situation. They took the child, they separated, like a police person stood in between the parent and the child, and took the child from them and placed him under a mental health hold or whatever, right? And they wound up, there was another mental health facility within the San Antonio area, thank God. And so over the course of like 2 or 3 days, because there's a statute of limitations, as like, if they have them for 72 hours, then they can't be transferred. So over the course of like 72 hours, a slew of really horrible things went on, where they couldn't transfer him. They couldn't discharge him. They weren't allowed to do anything as his parents, even. And even the hospital that they wanted to have him transferred to, just because the first hospital had gone about it in a really horrible way and they were lied to and like all these other things, the hospital that he was at told the other hospital that they couldn't transfer him because the ambulance fee had to be paid first before they could transfer him, which is a lie, because normally you would just bill insurance afterwards, right? So the hospital that they were going to transfer him to literally paid the fee out of their own pocket to get him transferred to this other hospital. And had to do that because the first mental hospital had gone so wrong and done so many bad things. And so finally, I mean, they were able to transfer him, but she had to literally stand, I mean, for like a good 12 hours. She was sitting in the waiting area of the mental hospital to make sure that he left that hospital in an ambulance, because they weren't going to let him out. They weren't going to let him even go to another hospital. And so after all was said and done with, they transferred him to the hospital. They still, the second hospital still had to keep him, but they were finally explained why they had to keep him. And he was traumatized. I mean, traumatized. I was traumatized, and all I did was hear about it. And they were told after the fact that the only thing that they could basically do, they couldn't sue the hospital because of whatever reason, probably because they have too much money. But the only thing that they could really do was to push for change in like the laws and stuff like that. And so there's the system is broken for people who need mental health.
Of course.
The health system in America is broken, period. But the mental health system is scary.
Oh, absolutely.
Scary.
Absolutely. So let me give you a little bit of a different story. Okay. And Joe, my daughter, Joey, laughs about this and tells this story all the time. Mm-hmm. So I'm not outing her at all with this.
Yeah.
So last year, she was having a lot of mental health issues. She still does, but she's getting better. Yeah. But when she was at school a couple times, she had some suicidal thoughts, and we got whatever. So we eventually, not eventually, we took her to see our primary care to get her on meds while we were waiting on her psychiatrist appointment, because it just takes forever, which is another part of the broken system. Right. And then, to see her first time you see a psychiatrist can take up to a month sometimes because of booking and stuff like that. Yeah. But anyway, luckily, our primary care, did some fellowships and other stuff like that in mental health. So she was able to, at least diagnose the situation to where, hey, this will at least help you until you go get on, proper testing and blah, 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 which a lot of PCPs do. So thankfully that does happen. But anyway, when they were doing the evaluation, Joey again was exhibiting some suicidal thoughts. So the doctor was like, I'm not going to put her on antidepressants. I need you to take her to the emergency room. This is how I know. Yeah. So because I need her to get an emergency psych eval. Mm-hmm. And so we left, and Joey's like, what the fuck is going on? I mean, she was literally freaking out. She's like, Dad, they're going to fucking commit me. I'm fine. Never mind. I regret everything I just said. Right. And I'm like, Joey, I got to take you. These are the answers that you gave to her. And this is what she thought. And she's like, hold on a second. Stop the car. So she made me stop the car. She runs back into the doctor's office and says, I need to talk to the doctor again. So she went back and talked to the doctor again and was able to convince the doctor at this point that she was not suicidal and that she didn't need to go to the emergency room.
That's good.
Talk about some narcissistic tendencies.
I don't know if that's narcissistic.
or
she was able to convince her.
Manipulative. I don't know. I'm just joking, but in all reality, that's what it really happened, and it kind of made me go, what? Yeah. 10 minutes ago, and now all of a sudden, but that's what they really do. I mean, they will send you to the emergency room for those reasons, especially if they feel there's an immediate danger.
Right. Which. So they were also this family also figured out that had they have not gone to that mental health facility, had they not have shown up, then the police would have come to their door in the middle of the night and taken him out of their home because they went against medical advice, and they would have been deemed a danger to their son at that point.
Yeah.
Which has happened before to parents.
Oh, absolutely it has.
And That's so traumatizing. So traumatizing.
Yeah.
I get it's an emergency situation. I get the urgency behind it, but like, why would you just cause more trauma to a situation like that? Like, that's there's now PTSD. And he even came home and said after the fact, thank you, baby. He even came home and said after the fact that he was never going to speak out loud again about how he felt, because that's how they handled it.
Wow.
Which is horrible and sad, but I get it.
Yeah. It's one of those things that just, it's sad. It really is. You know, and this comes back to the vices conversation. You know, it's so sad that in this country, the system is so broken that they feel the need to actually lean on those vices because they feel that they can't, that is the most disgusting thing ever.
I'm sorry, I'm sick. Leave me alone.
I know, I'm just messing with you. But you know, they lean on these vices for that reason, because they feel they can't get help anywhere else, or they're too embarrassed, or they're afraid of the brokenness of it.
Hi, Gabriel.
Yeah, I was just going to say hi, Gabriel. But you know, and that's pretty sad as well.
Oh, I concur.
Yeah, I mean,
they feel like they have to self-medicate. I have a family member who, you know, self-medicates with like a little bit harder drugs sometimes, and it's so sad to me to watch them do that, and heartbreaking.
Yeah. Here's another comment here. I love doing this, just the comment stuff, because I don't have to worry about it for the podcast.
Right.
Like I do at nighttime. I can't really read comments. Sounds like they tried to admit him under the 5150, which is the Texas equivalent to the Baker Act. So so not every state has the Baker Act. Right. I'm familiar with it because Florida has the Baker Act. So for those of you who aren't familiar with it, the Baker Act just basically means that they could put you under a 72-hour mandatory hold of for mental illness, you know, purposes. If they feel you're a danger to yourself or anyone else, a doctor, a police officer, you know, you could actually Baker Act your own child. If you feel that way. And once you do that, there's no way out of it. You're stuck for 72 hours. Yep. And that's just how it is. And it sounds like the doctors or nurses did that to this person during that time in Texas. Yeah. I mean, and unfortunately that's just the way it is. Now, could they have handled it better? Probably. But at the same time, that's what it sounds like they did.
Well, but I mean, according to the law, apparently they couldn't have, because he was going to go whether they liked it or not. They were just lied to about it to begin with.
And that's what I'm saying. So lying to him about it was the way they could have been better about it. But at the same time, you know, when for Beer and Baker Act, you need to know.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's just, you know, or 5150 or whatever your state calls it. I don't even think Virginia has something like that. So I mean, I know that we don't have anything like that here. My fact checker at home, please fact check me if I'm wrong on that, but I don't believe Virginia has something like that. So some states don't. I know that for a fact. Yeah. I'm not sure if Maryland does, but it's situations like that, you know, again, say how broken the system is, which again leads to vices being the cure. I mean, well, do you also realize, I mean, as far as the vices go, some people will have been diagnosed and they'll be given, you know, Lexapro or whatever the case might be. Mm-hmm. And then they'll lose their job, lose their insurance, and they can't afford it anymore. There's fucking, you know, drug dealers that actually deal in prescriptions. Yeah. I mean, and that's, you know, but they'll also deal in other things as well. Right, but I mean, but they deal in prescriptions because they know that it's that broken. So if you're constantly going to a drug dealer for your Xanax or for your Lexapro or for a Zoloft because you can't afford it because of, you know, you lost your job in insurance, right? The odds of you end up getting something else could be even worse. Who's to say that Lexapro isn't laced with coke? Or who's to say he said, I know you like this, but you know what? I'm telling you this right now. This will help you even better. And then boom, other stuff happens. Exactly. It all comes back down to the broken system.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm so fed up with it. Also, cigarettes can be a vice. Nicotine.
Oh, absolutely.
Smoke. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I used to smoke, and I loved smoking. Oh
I did too. I miss holding a cigarette in my hand,
right?
and a cigarette in my left hand, and then a beer in my right hand.
Yeah. I used to be like driving down the road, and I would smell it like with my windows open. I would smell someone else smoking in their car while I'm driving down the road, and I would slow down and just try to like huff as much of the scent of it as I could. When I would hang out with people and friends, I would be like, can I just like stand next to you and secondhand smoke? Because now if I try to do it, it'll make me sick. But
yeah.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Well, so I've actually talked to several different people about this, and I actually want to do an episode on this.
Oh, say it.
People who so for those of you on Facebook or Periscope who can't see this question, they asked, is sex a vice?
Yeah.
So it can be, I would assume, if you're violent about it. But then that also comes down to most vices have an addictive quality about them. There are some people that don't believe you can be a sex addict. There's some people that don't believe sex addiction is real. And this is actually a conversation I actually want to have on the show and get some people on there, and probably have you on there as well. But that is a good question.
Who is that guy? Who is the movie star dude? Maybe he's not a movie star, but he like is known for doing all kinds of drugs. He was a sexaholic. He talked about it being one of his vices.
But the thing about it is, it comes down to, I don't know. All I know is that some people say that it is an actual addiction. Some people would say it's not.
What's his name?
Who are you talking about?
He's got longish hair, and now he's all like Zen and talks about, finding yourself and stuff. What is his name? Somebody help.
Charlie
Sheen? No, not Charlie Sheen. No.
Yeah, Charlie Sheen is definitely not Zen.
No.
Yeah, who are you talking about? Yeah.
Famous person. Hold on. He's been on like all kinds of talk shows. He has his own podcast. Russell Brand. Is it Russell Brand? I think his name is Russell Brand. Hold on.
The guy that was married to Katy Perry?
I don't know.
That's not him. No.
I have his picture pulled up. Hold on. I need to know his name.
It's not Russell Brand.
It is too. It's Russell Brand. He came out and said that he's been on like every kind of drug. He used to be a sexaholic, like real bad. And he talks about it all the time. He's got his own podcast now because he is like the famous version of Jay Shetty.
Okay, but now you're talking about another famous person. This guy was married to Katy Perry. He is an actor. He's a comedian.
Russell Brand was a comedian?
See, that's what I'm saying. I don't think we're talking about the same. You're talking about Eric Benet?
What? No, I don't know who Eric Benet is.
Yeah, because I don't think you're talking about Russell Brand.
I swear to God, it's Russell Brand.
Russell Brand is a comedian and an actor and used to be married to Katy Perry. While he has done every drug known to man, he does not have an anti-Zen, podcast about. Is it?
It is Russell Brand.
Mandy, okay, I will trust. I'm sorry, maybe you're right. Maybe if now
he's a comedian. I didn't know that.
I will. So the person that just confirmed that, I don't argue with her. I just say yes.
Yeah.
So maybe it is. Okay, so it is.
Yeah, and he was married to Katy Perry. You're right.
Okay, so I didn't know that he was. I didn't know he was doing that now. But again, it comes down to. Okay, see, I didn't know about that. So he very recently spoke out about his drug and sex addiction.
Yeah.
So again, but the question then comes into play is, is sex an addiction? Now, can it be a vice? Absolutely. But I mean, but I more correlate, now again, this is just me, my opinion, not the textbook definition. The textbook definition is in the, description of this video. I feel, a vice is something that you're addicted to. My mom's calling me.
Hi, Mom. Why isn't she watching?
That's what I'm going to say.
Does she want to be on the show? You could pick it up and be like, and put her on speaker. Hey, Mom, do you have something to say about vices or sex specifically? That'd be hilarious.
But again, so the question then comes, is sex, an addiction? Can sex be an addiction?
I think it can be. Absolutely.
See, I don't know. I don't know.
Why don't you know?
Because all too famously, I've heard a lot of doctors speak out about it, saying that it's not really an addiction. And at the same time, I've also heard people say, that it's just, it's a crutch people use for people who are just overly horny and have high, sex drives, which is nothing wrong with that. So, but again, the vice part, where I do believe it can be a vice, is if you're using it to hurt other people, or you're using it to manipulate other people into giving you what you want in order to get what you want out of it. Oh, I'm not really in the mood tonight. And then you talk them into it by guilt tripping them or something like that. Then that's, that could be considered a vice. But I'm talking about, I guess we're talking about two different things.
Well, so here's why I think that it is and can be, because it's not that I necessarily think that sex is the addiction, right? So when you have an addiction, your brain actually puts off different hormones. There's a specific one that causes happy feelings.
Endorphins.
You know what I mean? Endorphins.
Endorphins.
Yeah. So when you do drugs, you could have more endorphins flowing through your system than you normally would. When you're having sex, you can have more endorphins flowing through your system than you normally would. So I don't think it's necessarily even I'm not a doctor, I don't know, but I think there's at least a possibility that someone can be addicted to the euphoric stage, like we were talking about, and the endorphins that it causes versus the actual thing itself.
So I think,
and maybe that's why people can say, oh, I'm addicted to pot, because it causes them to feel a certain way.
Yeah. So I think this can be our conversation for next week. Because I think this whole sex topic,
right,
and relates to mental health and being a vice or an addiction, can be a whole episode.
Oh yeah.
So Gabriel, thank you very much. I'll get a I know somebody that is willing to come on the show. I've already talked to her. Who's a sex therapist. When
did you talk to her?
A while ago, because I was actually going to do an episode. See, this is actually a very huge debate in the mental health world.
Yeah.
So
let's do it.
Yeah, so I definitely think that'll be our topic for next week. I already have somebody that that I can bring on the show. Because I was actually going to do an episode on Suck It about it. But I think this is better made for this.
Cool.
So yeah, we'll do that next week. So let's go ahead and put the sex talk to the side, because I think that is a whole episode.
Oh yeah.
Because when it comes to mental health, it's not just, the craving for it, it's also the lack of, and other things as well. So that's a great, Gabriel, you rock. I appreciate it. Go follow Gabriel at Made from Scratch broadcast on YouTube, or Instagram,
or literally anywhere.
Yeah.
He's awesome and amazing, and has all kinds of really cool episodes.
Yeah, so go follow Gabriel Leal at Made from Scratch broadcast, not podcast, broadcast. Yep. Speaking of which, while you're also doing that, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button on our channel here. Yes. Wrong one. Wrong background. But no, so yeah, so we'll do that. We'll have that conversation next week. Sex addiction, sex vice, sex and mental health, whatever. But we'll definitely do that next week. But as far as other things go, I mean, I think we've hit the nail on the head. I think people are still going to have vices regardless. But I think
especially as long as the system is broken.
That's what I was getting ready to say. Yeah. I think it's more enhanced because of the broken system. I would love to do some fact checking on this, like the amount of or I do a study on it, you know, on my own time, and maybe we can talk about it next week, or maybe it can be done quickly and it's already been done. But like, and here in America, where we have, you know, private medicine, you know, compare our, you know, addiction numbers and alcoholism numbers and stuff like that to other countries that have socialized medicine. I would love to know the comparison.
Yeah.
Per capita, not
right.
Popular. Yeah. So I want a per capita, you know, number based on that. So I'll do some research on that. I don't know if it's ever been done, but I could definitely get some answers, you know, researching on my own time. But that's a good question. I wonder how accurate what we're saying is based off of fact. Right now, we're just talking based off of opinion. The fact that we believe that, you know, addiction and other things in this country are so much higher because of the fact that, you know, mental health is so high and our health system is broken. Is it like that in other countries?
I'm trying to do it now. Yep. We're going to do that because, yeah.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we have Canada, you know, not too far away. And at a bare minimum, we could do Canada versus the US.
Yeah. But I mean, but also marijuana is legal up there too. So I'm kind of, so we'd have to, like, you know, I'm just curious.
The first thing that I pulled up actually separates out cannabis from illicit drug use and
there we
alcohol.
go.
So
perfect. Well, no, I would want alcohol included in that.
So they count it as different, I think, though, because alcohol is legal and other illicit drugs are not. And that's, I mean, I would want to know the difference as well between the two.
Well, what does it say on that one without cannabis or alcohol?
So in Canada, so for adults, we'll just go by adults. It says, in Canada, the use of drugs in over 25 population, this is on help.org, by the way, is much lower than among youth and has been declining. Canadians aged 25 and over generally use illicit drugs at a lower rate and continues to use them less frequently over time. The use of cannabis among adults has decreased from 10% to 7.9%. Illicit drugs is 0.8%. Alcohol is 35.7%.
Well, they're Canadians. But how does that relate to America?
So in the United States, the most current drug use statistics provide information for all groups, making it difficult to compare drug use between adults in the two nations. For alcohol use, 52% of Americans aged 18 and up report regular drinking, while 13% report frequent drinking. So 52% for alcohol in America versus 35.7% in Canada.
And that's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. But only 13% report infrequent drinking in America versus light frequent drinkers is 32.2%. So I wonder too if it also might have something to do with like the definition that each country has for, you know, light to moderate drinking and whatnot. Like that's hard to.
So we'll have to do some more research on that. But I mean, I do think that that's what it comes down to. Overall, straight up, is you know, again, there's going to be vices. People are still going to use coke. People are still going to drink, gamble, use heroin, whatever. Yeah. But I think on a larger scale, it would be, you know, lessened if the medical system in this country was less broke, I could say. It's never going to get to the point where it's not broken in this country, unfortunately, but less broke. And also, she said, keep in mind the numbers may be skewed on what you're looking at. So we'll have to do some definite research and come up with our own study and averages and stuff like that. And I will have some fun doing that this week. Okay. But no, we'll talk about that next week. We'll go ahead and wrap up that conversation on vices and include those numbers. But I also want to compare it to other, you know, like Sweden and stuff like that. Yeah. because like Sweden is the healthiest country in the world, and with a socialized medicine system and so on and so forth. I'm really kind of curious.
Best education system ever.
Yeah. So I'm really kind of curious about that.
Yeah.
We can look that up next week, and then also we'll talk about sex addictions and sex vices and stuff like that. Because I think this conversation got a little more broad than I expected it to.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, absolutely. I knew it was going to be a big conversation. I knew it was going to be a long conversation, but I didn't realize it was going to be this.
I told you we probably should have had like one per vice.
Well, I mean, I think the opening statement of this, we could probably break it up into other topics, but I think the opening statement of it is, what we believe, what our experiences are with them, so on and so forth, and then break them up like that. And also based off of comments in the chat, stuff like that. So that's exactly what we got going on here. So again, thanks to Gabriel for that one. We will definitely set that up for next week. And actually, I think that's a really, really, really good topic. But again, not just sex as a vice, sex as a whole in the mental health community.
Yeah, because sex is important to mental health and intimacy and closeness and whatnot. So
correct, yeah, because intimacy, is a big part of mental health as well. Sure. That feeling of closeness and stuff like that can help you, settle who you are and so on and so forth.
Sure.
But overall, I think it just comes down to whether, when you're feeling like that, I'm not going to sit here and say, don't do it. Cause me saying don't do it is not going to help anybody. No, it's really not. But at least be more aware of what you're doing and why. If you're feeling depressed and you pick up a beer, that's okay. I'm going to sit here and say, I'm not a medical professional. A medical professional would say, don't do that. That's wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that. That's fucked up because I know you're going to. But once you get into your 7th or 8th or 9th or 10th, realize why you're doing it. Is it an alcohol problem? Is it a mental health issue? Or is it just a, what is it? Just be more aware of what you're doing. And then as far as like the illegal activities go, I'm not going to comment on that. That's something that you need to get help for.
Yeah, please.
And what I mean, I'm not talking about pot. You might be, but I'm talking about cocaine, heroin, stuff like that. Illegal Xanax, stuff like that.
Like pot is even legal in DC. Like pot's legal.
It should be legal. It should be legal. And the reason why I keep on having this conversation and going back to that is because right now I'm in the middle of negotiating with a couple different CBD/marijuana companies on sponsoring my main show. So I will not.
I'm not going to talk about pot because I'm going to promote it.
I'm going to promote it. Absolutely.
Right. Well, but I think that CBD even is different than pot, like the oils and stuff.
Because it comes directly from hemp.
Seizures. Yeah.
Yeah. But either way, so I'm in the process of working on that. So, you might see a new sponsor come up here soon.
Gotcha. To you.
Yeah. So
helps for chronic pain. That's totally different. Anyway.
But again, that's a whole other conversation.
Harder things. Yeah. Oh, you know what else they're doing right now? They're experimenting. Scientists are experimenting with microdosing with shrooms. Did you know that?
So we can actually have this conversation. No, I actually had this conversation on Thursday.
Oh, okay.
On Thursday, I had the CEO of a cannabis/CBD company out of California called Papa and Barkley. And we actually talked about, the medical effects of marijuana. We talked about the medical effects of shrooms, even LSD. Yeah. So they're actually doing all these tests right now. And that's why Colorado has legalized even mushrooms. Colorado has legalized them.
I've never had those before.
Me neither.
I would experiment with microdosing. I can maybe do that.
But again, the thing about it is, it comes down to, stuff like that. So, that's all a conversation for another day.
Are they going to sell them? Wait a minute. Is Colorado going to start selling them in like?
It's already legal. You can sell it. You can buy them at a dispensary. Ooh. It's been legal for a while.
I might need to go to Colorado soon.
I think we all do.
I'm just intrigued. I mean, I never did like I tried pot like a couple times growing up, but it never really did much for me. So I didn't really care for it, but I was too much of a pussy to try other drugs.
When we were younger, dear,
yeah.
There was only 2 strains, regular and then Crip, or skunk. Now, there's like 5,000 different strains that do each different things. People have gotten creative with it.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
again, now if you want to learn more about that topic, you can go back to my conversation on Thursday with Adam Grossman. Just saying. Go back and watch that episode. It was a good episode. Yeah. But no, in all reality, it just comes down to what you're doing and why. And if you need help, ask for it. Like I say every time. And if you don't know how to ask for help, BetterHelp is always that option. Yeah. So please go to betterhelp.com/SIPod, as in suck it, SIPod for 10% off. That's betterhelp.com/SIPod.
And I would hope that everybody has like family members that they can go to too, that love them and will help them, at least support them through whatever they need. But if you don't, you can go to friends or create friends. Like I wish there were kind of like, how like if you're homeless, you can go to a shelter. Yeah. I wish that there were like places like that.
I'm sure there are mental health free clinics. But that's something I would have to look at because I'm not sure where or how many or if they're even effective. Yeah. Who they're controlled by, so on and so forth. Right. Which eventually I do want to, I'm not even gonna get into it. Just know that myself and this show are going to be doing something big within the next year for mental health. Okay. Yeah. I devised a plan.
You are an executor of plans.
I am. I try to be at least. Yeah. But this has been an interesting conversation.
For sure.
I don't know who my guest. I can't remember her name. If she can't do it, I gotta find somebody else. But next week, I definitely will have a therapist on here with us. Hopefully, it's a sex therapist. Well, I mean. I would prefer to be a sex therapist, but a regular therapist can talk about it too. But I would prefer for it to be a sex therapist to come on the show next week and talk about specifically sex and mental health and vices and sex addiction and stuff like that. So that'll be our conversation for next Monday at noon. Cool. So we're going to keep this conversation going for a while. So definitely come back next Monday and every Monday after that. So please make sure you like, share, subscribe. And click that bell. But until next week, we love everybody. Please make sure you take care of yourself and your family. And we will talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.